Okay, so coming back to this simple UI, this is still going to be read-only for this first step here, this next step, step 3. But you might have noticed when I put this grid that sits inside grid row 1, right? So it's inside this row of the main grid, right? I called it content panel. I defined 2 rows, an auto size and a star size. And our grid view is actually in the second one, in the star size row. Nothing is sitting in the first row yet. I kind of reserved that spot in the UI design here to put our drop-down list, right? So we need I'm going to use a stack panel in row 0 there. So I'll just grab the code and put it in place. And you know, one of the confusing things about UWP, the order that stuff is in code doesn't really matter as much, because with attached property, you say this goes inside over here, right? But to make it logical, I'm going to put it here. It could go below grid view. It would function exactly the same, but I'm going to put it above it because to me it makes more sense logically. Because this is going to go inside of grid row 0 of the containing grid, as opposed to the grid view, which goes inside of grid row 1, right? So it's just a stack panel, right? I have a text block saying patients by doctor, right? And then I'll throw in a combo box. You've used combo boxes with UWP. It's your little drop-down list, basically, right? So I gave it a name, okay? Vertical alignment stretch, display member path, okay? So we're going to bind objects, a collection of objects as data to the combo box. So the display member path is which property of those objects is going to be displayed in the drop-down, right? So it'll be the formal name of the doctor. Okay. And I'll have a selection changed event. So as you pick doctors out of the list, okay, then I'll trigger my selection changed event and then apply the filtering for just patients for the selected doctor. That's the idea here, right? I have a placeholder text that gets replaced once we actually load data in there anyway. Okay, so now the rest of the work is done in the code behind. So let's come back to the code behind page. All right, so I'm going to change the call here, right when we first load show patients. No, we're not ready yet, okay? We have to get our combo box ready first, and then we'll filter patients depending on the option selected in our combo box. So I'm going to make a method. I decide to call it fill dropdown. So that's what we'll call here. We'll call fill dropdown. It doesn't exist yet, but we'll get to that soon, right? And we're going to modify show patients to take a doctor ID parameter. So whenever we call show patients, we'll say, okay, here's a parameter for the doctor you want to filter by. Now, of course, if we pass null, then it'll just give all the patients, right? So in show patients here, I'll add a parameter, a nullable int, so we can call it without passing a doctor ID. Okay. And then down here in the try, what we'll do is after we prepare the list of patients, I'll add an if. So if the parameter I defined up here, my doctor ID, has a value greater than 0, then I know I want to call in my patient repository, get patients by doctor, where I pass the doctor ID. Exactly as how we defined the functionality inside the repository itself. Else, what we had originally, just give me all the patients, right? And that's it. And then we set the item source of my grid view, which is the name of it is patient list, to my collection of patients. So that's the change there. All right. Now, we'll have to actually have something for fill dropdown, won't we? So maybe I'll put it above. Doesn't matter really the order. But it's going to be structured similarly to what we had for show patients, in that I'm going to, first of all, okay, it is modifying the UI, so I figure I might as well have my progress ring show up again, make it visible and active, right? Now I need to go get my doctors. So I already have my doctor repository, I added that earlier. So I'm going to use it to call get doctors. So I'll go get all my doctors, put it into this list of doctor objects. But of course, there's no such thing as all doctors coming from the database. So, but I can cheat a little here and manually add a new option, right? Remember, the combo box itself is going to be bound to this, whatever collection I give it. So if I add my fake prompt, so to speak, my all doctors prompt manually into the collection before I bind it, that'll get the job done for me. So that's what I'm going to do here. I go to this doctor's collection, this list. I'm going to insert, okay? And when we call insert, we give an index and then the item, right? So the index is going to be 0 because I want it at the top, right? Doctor ID is 0, and I'm cheating a little here. I'm just going to set the last name. Remember, on the client side, although first name is required as far as the data integrity on the server side, my object doesn't have any such restriction, right? So I just define the last name as dash all doctors, right? Okay, so I'll set the item source of the doctor combo, right, to my collection of doctors. And then I can call show patients passing null, right? That'll just initially give me all patients without being filtered at all. Okay, my catch, same kind of thing. If there's a problem with the connection with the server, right, I can say there's no connection and so on and so forth. And finally, after I'm done, I'll stop the progress ring from spinning. Now, one more thing I need, right, when I select my other event I added here, okay, the selection changed event is doctor combo selection change, so I've got to add that to the code behind. I don't know. I'll stick it at the bottom here almost, right? Okay. So my selection changed is here, right? So it's just a standard selection changed event. I go and I get the selected item for my doctor combo. Now it's just an object at that point, so I'm casting it as an actual doctor object, right? So that's my selected doctor. So then I can go to it, get the ID, and pass that when I call show patients. So show patients is already set up with, if I give it a doctor ID, it will use that to filter, give me just the patients for the doctor. Now I got to fix this. I no longer want to call show patients. I want to call basically my fill dropdown, right? I want to, if I'm going to refresh the whole thing, what if somebody added a new doctor, right? I want to make sure that the doctor's drop-down list gets refreshed as well. So that'll refresh all that, and then, of course, by default, it will also refresh my list of patients. So, just check that my web API is still running. Yep, looks like it is. Lots and lots of data. I've got lots of doctors too, which is maybe kind of not so great for running my little client here, because my combo box will be pretty long, but that's okay. As long as I don't have any build errors, this should come up in a moment. There we are. And there we are. So here's my list, all doctors. There's all my doctors to choose from. So if I go to Charles Xavier, now I just see the patients that are assigned to Charles Xavier, right? Pick somebody else, Doogie Howser, okay? Now, of course, I could also sort the list if I wanted to. I'd be safe even sorting it because my item, okay, has a space at the beginning, so it'd go to the top anyway, right? But there we go. I can try all different doctors, see the patients they have, or anytime I want, I can go back to all doctors. Oh, you saw the progress ring finally show up there for a moment, eh? Yeah. Go back to all. If you watch carefully, it should be there for a second. There we go. As it took a moment to go and get all the doctors, and away we go. All right. So that finishes the demo of a quick, strictly read-only version, okay? Because we haven't actually gotten around to adding, or I should say refining the functionality as we need to of the actual rest of the CRUD operations, the insert, update, and delete in the web API. Okay, any questions about our first step 3, our demo here of our first real client for our web API? It's read-only, but it's fully functional. All right, I'll stop the recording. No, it was less than 10 minutes.